whether the title of this session is What's the Best Horror Movie Ever Made or What's the Scariest. Is there a difference between those two things?
Absolutely. Because, I mean, I would even argue that what is the point of discussing what is the best movie ever made or what is the best horror or any genre ever made? Because there's so many different ways to approach it. And that's kind of the beauty of it. When people often say, oh, I'm not into horror, it's not for me. I'm like, okay, but are you just thinking of gore? Are you just thinking of jump scares? Are you just thinking of this specific thing that you don't like? Because there's so many different flavors and types of filmmaking within horror that you can always find a little flavor that works for you. And then the thing that I always, the second question I would always posit is it successful because it scares you, which is what we kind of expect from a horror film. In which case, if a film actually manages to truly, truly terrify or scare you, I'm not talking about kind of jump scares or special effects or kind of gross out stuff. I'm talking about genuinely get under your skin. That shows you something about your own fears and your own anxieties that perhaps you're not even comfortable talking out or saying out loud or discussing with anybody else. And that's the really interesting stuff for me. So for me, the most successful horror film is the one that actually truly scares you in a deep way that you might not even be comfortable discussing, not just kind of in polite company, but in any company. The one that kind of makes you go, yeah, okay, I've just seen that and I kind of want to go be by myself right now. It's not necessarily always the fun type.
It's tapping into something on some level. Yeah, really fascinating. Kim, slightly different question to you.
Good.
Tell me why you love it.
The question I always hear under that question is, why are you a freak? Right? Now, my response...
I would ask the same question to people who love musicals,
fair enough.
But
but those guys are really sick. I'll put it like this. In his communications with the police and the FBI, the Zodiac Killer did not talk about horror films. He talked about The Mikado, the Gilbert and Sullivan opera, which apparently was a big favourite of the Zodiac Killer. It's thought that he also might quite have liked The Most Dangerous Game, which is a horror movie and is just out on Blu-ray with a commentary track by me. It's a corollary to what Anna said, which is, I think everybody likes a certain type of horror in the way that people have a sense of humor. You may like carry-on films. You may like Noel Coward comedies. There's a wealth of difference. You may like, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You may like subtle M.R. James ghost stories. Everybody has something that creeps under their skin. I'm actually interested in the whole panoply of horror. I find the various approaches and methods and the meanings that we take out of horror films. I mean, I spent some time yesterday at the Somerset House exhibition, the horror show, which is sort of interesting. It comes at horror from the perspective of non-genre art, and looking at there's real tension between two approaches to horror. One is the sense that monsters, which extends to ghosts, witches, vampires, whatever, are admirable rebels against an evil system, and that we look at horror. And I believe I've selected Frankenstein as one of the clips, and that's a film where I think almost nobody identifies with torch-bearing peasants. Yeah, right. I mean, it's like, I'm sorry, the whole point of the story of Frankenstein is that we identify with the monster. We are the monster. But on the other hand, there's Dracula. Now, I kind of worry about people who would identify with Dracula or Nosferatu, but I can actually see why. There are elements there. So there are monsters we find admirable, monsters we find terrifying, and monsters we're tempted by. We're tempted to wear the skin. I always think it's a real cop-out at the end of The Lost Boys or Near Dark, where people have been a vampire for about 20 minutes, and then they're allowed to go back to normal. I think, no. You commit all the way to being a monster if you do, and you accept the murderous guilt that comes along with that. If you can live with that, then you are a monster. And I think that maybe the point of horror is to address this question of what is a monster.